33. A biopark first in Dominica. Crimes against economy. National jurisprudence defines crimes against humanity as certain acts that are purposefully committed as part of a widespread or systematic policy directed against civilians in time of peace or war. I would like to ask a simple question. What should we do when public officials fail to perform the minimum of duty that could contribute to the development of the people living within the state? Are these not crimes against economy? Examples of this are to be found in the incidences in which development assistance had to be returned to the donor because of the lack of either ambition, foresight, or initiative on the part of a single individual in charge. The case of the biopark in Layou, Dominica, had some of its origin in this scenario. Sometime in 2009, my friend Afi Mate came to me with the astonishing news that one of the departments of government was facing a deadline to utilize a set of funds earmarked for a project to promote ecological balance in Dominica. I think this may have been brought to his attention by the director of Discover Dominica, Colin Piper. Ati thought this to be a ridiculous state of affairs and wondered if we could not propose the establishment of a biopark in Dominica. A biopark in Dominica? I think I know how to design that. The big feather in my cap was the kudos I had just received a few years back from my work in the valuation of the Grime Hall Nature Sanctuary in Barbados. Soon all the pieces were in place. Colin Piper of Discover Dominica would access the European Commission funds before they were returned. Afi Mate would use his unit, the Development Institute, TDI, as the project carrier, and I would compose the details of the project. With these wheels in motion, we began the first task of choosing a site for the establishment of this biopark. Locating the best site. Dominica has always had very skilled and informed persons working in the field, almost oblivious to their immediate bosses. One such person was Mr. Ashton Lugay, whom I chose to classify as an ecosystem specialist. Ashton was a forestry officer who knew the distinguishing physical features of most, if not all, of the watersheds in Dominica. His task was to suggest an appropriate site for our biopark. The major contenders were the Layou River Basin, the Rosalie Basin, and the Twapiton Plateau at Wattenwaven. Ashton chose Layou because of its proximity to the capital city, that is, less than 10 miles from Roseau, and for its physical elements including topography and nature attractions. To hear Ashton describe Layou would make you want to buy land there if you had the money. As a location, the Layou River Basin really fit the bill. It was approximately 7 miles long, located in the central part of the island from east to west, and included all the surrounding landscapes of the Layou River. The river itself was Dominica's longest river, stretching from the heights of Poncase Valley in the middle of the island all the way down to the mouth of the Layou River near the village of Layou. There were no major villages along the route except the Layou village, population approximately 800, and the Layou Park village, a small agricultural community in the middle of the Layou River Basin. of the land was privately owned and broken up into small subsistence farming in the higher elevations, while the larger estates were located in areas closer to the coast. The topographical features were also appealing. The proposed area stretched from the sea level to approximately 913 feet above sea level and included both gentle slopes and steep mountainous areas. A main road ran through the center of the valley from the seacoast to the Pont Cassé area. For the purpose of our exercise, Ashton had created 4 landscape sections. Section 1 from the Layou River mouth to the Layou Main Bridge. Section 2 from the Layou Main Bridge to the second bridge near the hot water area. Section 3 from the second bridge to the third bridge near Goul, and Section 4 from the Goul Bridge to near the Layou Park community. Layou had its own natural attractions. The vegetation ranged from a dry shrub to rainforest vegetation. These included plant species ranging from sea grapes, saman, bamboo, lucane, strangler ficus, lagli, ornamental ficus, and ornamental sip, padu mawan, African tulip, and royal palms. Most of these I have never heard of before. I was familiar with the crops cultivated on plantations, such as coconuts, bananas, pineapples, citrus, ground provisions, and other root crops. Water features were also very attractive here. The drainage had its source in the Mont Papiton watershed and other tributaries, right into the Layou Basin, which fed the Layou River. The main water features along the basin included the hot water pool, waterfalls, gorges, and Matthew Dam, which was formed following a major landslide in the area approximately 10 years prior. The place was shaping up to be the ideal location. In terms of infrastructure, there was a road network, including a main highway with secondary and farm access roads traversing the entire valley and providing access to most of the sites. One other interesting infrastructure feature was the structural remains of the former Layou River Hotel, which had been closed due to problems associated with ownership and finance. This structure had a lot of potential due to its proximity to the road and a good parking area. In one sense, I could have said, just take over the old Layou Hotel and make your case. But like every other attractive location in this nature island, Layou had its environmental challenges. First was the use of pesticides for agriculture, which posed an environmental concern, particularly along areas in close proximity to the river banks. The second was the ridge in the upper elevations of the Matthew River, which was prone to slippage. Back in 1997, such slippage had formed the Matthew Landslide Dam. 17 years later, July 27, 2011, the landslide dam forming a lake on the Matthew River was itself breached, sending more sediment into the Layou River below. Conceptualizing a biopark. We wanted to propose a park structure that would not only become a tourist attraction in itself, but also a strong edifice to sound environmental management. The park had to have 3 characteristics. 1. Functional. A natural history facility aimed at introducing visitors to the landscape features of this specific area. 2. Interactive. It had to be concerned with education and research into the ecosystem of the specific area, while serving as a focal point to engage the local community into becoming active custodians of their physical environment. 3. Exhibitional. It should house an herbarium aimed at exposing visitors and residents to the fauna and flora, as well as contributing to the conservation of the same. The park had to exhibit some locational features as well. We wanted the core area of the park to be in close proximity to the central features of the landscape. These were the river, mangrove, rainforest, hiking trails, and even the volcanic vents. It also needed to become a teaching experience. As such, it would include the dominant plant species or rock formation or any other feature that was clearly distinguishable in the area. It should also be within visual distance of either agricultural small farms or social community existence. Finally, we decided that the park's mission should be in sync with the ecotourism goals, namely 1. To increase both the residents as custodians and the visitors' appreciation, understanding, and enjoyment of the environmental landscape in Dominica. To share awareness of other biopark structures with different ecosystem services. To provide a facility for the conservation of flora and fauna for the region. To interpret the local use of ecosystem services, plants, trees, animals, and water. To provide a unique recreational opportunity for local residents and visitors. And to facilitate scientific research into the natural history and environment of this specific location. The logic of a biopark. There was a time when development plans were the talk of the town. Folks would usually speak of the recent 5-year plan, the Deepwater Harbor plan, etc. This proposal, however, would be of a different genre, one that would generate both excitement and investment. The story it will tell will not end at the exit of the park but begin there. We wanted to build an edifice that will have a spin-off effect on visitors to experience the social, economic, and geospatial qualities exhibited as part and parcel of Dominica. Bioparks are good catalysts for promoting attraction in distinctive ecoregions. They tend to become the premier educational and interpretive facility in displaying lifestyle patterns in the different environments of a small land space. With respect to ecotourism, the fundamental premise was that the more people understood their location, the more they will enjoy what it has to offer, and the more anxious they will be to share their informed experience of the place with visitors. I used this point to make the observation that when the Layu Biopark project was designed in 2009, there had been nothing but natural and man-made disasters in the Layu River Basin. What we were hoping to prevent was the continuous use of this pristine environment for banal profit-making and polluting enterprises. Sadly enough, that expectation was to repeat itself when an asphalt company was allowed to construct its plant right on the bank of the river, leaking oil and other chemicals into the river. Such an establishment could not have occurred without planning permission from the Tongue and Country Division of the Physical Planning Unit. Should this not be regarded as some type of crime against the economy? To allow this type of economic activity in this area when a more constructive alternative in terms of a biopark was available seems to me to be criminal. Before the COVID pandemic, Dominica's tourism drive had always been eclipsed by its lack of white sand beaches, casinos, and sandal-like resorts. Hiking trails and eco-friendly resorts had tended to redefine the sector. Here in 2010, we were proposing a biopark to strengthen the performance of this ecotourism industry in Dominica. Having a park as an exhibition and educational space meant that researchers and their research results would be converted into a teachable experience for the visitor. Thus, the project had the capacity to appeal to two additional constituents: tertiary institutions, who would become critical to constructing and maintaining the educational components of the biopark, and international agricultural environmental institutions, whose financial support would be used to cover the establishment costs of the illustrative components of the park. Physical structure plan. The concept of the biopark included a site of about 10 acres, 4 hectares, equipped with, among other things, an interpretive room, exhibition areas with interlinking pathways, restaurant and retail outlet, meeting rooms, and parking. The estimated cost was within the vicinity of EC $15 million, some of which could be met by corporate sponsors. A viable customer base for the biopark would include, among others, short-term visitors whose numbers make them an attractive potential, longer-term visitors whose time and expenditure patterns make them attractive, and local residents seeking a recreational and educational experience. The profile of the park's components was identified as follows. First, there was a reception area comprising car park, administration, and visitors center housing a small souvenir shop, a restaurant food outlet area on the bank of the river that is accessible by road. The reception area will also include a pedestrian suspension bridge spanning the river and providing public access into the biopark. There were 6 other construction components worthy of mention. 1. The research zone maintains the herbarium conservatory and the herbal medicinal garden. 2. The biodiversity protection zone will be populated by a replica of Dominica's rainforest species. 3. There is an inner ring road for pedestrian observation walks. 4. There is an outer ring road along the perimeter of the park used only by management. 5. Amphitheater and resting areas with a vista as a special events place within the park, with the backdrop being the river. And 6. A sketch artist's corner where painting may be either commissioned or purchased. Small golf carts would be available for visitors who are unable or unwilling to walk the trail. The park project would have the capacity to become a collaborative illustration of the living environment in Dominica, with major contributions from other existing institutions, namely the Park Commissions, the Planning Division, the Forestry Division, the Local Government Authority, the Local Education System, historical societies, and the local community. We were particularly proud of the amphitheater and the sketch artist's corner, both of which would have provided economic opportunities to young artists. The plan was presented as a complete fundable project. It ranged from site location and design to market prospects, investment profile, a phased implementation plan, a legal framework, and a park steering committee. It was ready-made for international financing. I know for sure that the plan was presented to the cabinet sometime in 2010 because the cabinet secretary wrote me with instructions of how to present to Cabinet. I declined the invitation to do the presentation as Athy and Colin Piper had both vetted the project content and were fully capable of doing so. I don't know whatever happened to the project. Climate resilience is now the official chat. In 2018, after the devastation of Hurricane Maria, the Prime Minister of Dominica came up with the idea of making his country the first climate resilient nation. The leadership in Dominica have a way of confusing their renaming efforts as if they were new baptisms and new revelations. Here, 8 years after tabling the Layu Biopower project, this government created an agency called CREED, Climate Resilience Executive Agency of Dominica. The most published writers on the issue of revitalization and resilience in institutional structures is a gentleman by the name of Storm Cunningham. Storm was the publisher of Revitalization News. He has written a primer on creating resilient prosperity. In his book, he claimed that the two reasons why resilience and revitalization efforts often fail were a weak strategy and a poorly defined process. His familiar approach to introducing his concept was often to ask the question, why didn't your downtown beautification, historic restoration of mixed-use redevelopment revive your community? Then he would move in for the kill with this observation. Probably because you lacked an effective strategy and proven process to fully fund and implement revitalization. Once again, Cunningham states, today's emerging leading edge strategy for both resilience and sustainability are based on repurposing, renewing, and reconnecting our natural built and socio-economic assets. Building resilience can flow from projects that fulfill at minimum three conditions. 1. It must redesign and rebuild the core of our growth sector, that is tourism. 2. It should not only sustain itself as an institution, but cradle other entrepreneurship into sustainability. And 3. It must develop preparedness from as high as our education, business, and legislative structures down to the level of our community, neighborhood, and household, and in coherence with new established ways of doing things. The Layu Biopark project has been the only detailed project I know of to date that has the capacity to start building climate resilience in Dominica. Maybe one day you will find a strong and lasting replacement for this project effort.